here in Denver, Colorado. We're here in the world headquarters for the Small Business Chamber of Commerce, and it is the Startup Show. Welcome. And my name's John Wren. We're here each Friday at 10 o'clock to talk about startup, that part of life when you walk through the open door. And we try to encourage people. There are people that try to scare you off, tell you that the monsters are behind the door. But our philosophy here, our approach is based on what we think is a solid foundation. And we believe that doors are presented to us to step through. And you may be facing such a door right now. And if you are, you're at the right place. Or you may work with people who are contemplating that next door. That may be somebody calling to be on the show next week. Now, it's not going to count against them necessarily, but it's best if you don't call during the show while we're broadcasting live for obvious reasons. But as soon as the show's over, give us a call, 303-861-1447. Best is to call Monday or Tuesday, 303-861-1447. But a startup is an unusual animal. It is not subject to some of the usual laws of business. I say I'm a recovering MBA because a lot of what I learned in graduate business school, I've actually had to overcome to try to be helpful to people who are starting something new. And we all have to start something new from time to time. We start school, we start romances, we start families, we start complaining, whatever it is. There are changes in life that I believe if we can recognize their true nature, it can help each one of us and also help the world. I think that's the best way to be truly useful to those that come behind. And so we'll talk about startup a little bit today, and then I'm going to make a big announcement and tell you why I'm doing it and enlist your help. We set up a new Facebook page, a new website, as it were, and we're engaging with some experts. You can see I've got Andy Clary's t-shirt on, Orbit Design, and I'm wanting to talk to Andy about this. It may fit his model for building a sales machine, but we want, the purpose of everything that I'm doing is to try to strengthen the voice of grassroots in business and in politics. And the shift I'm announcing today is to try to help us move us more rapidly in that direction. The Small Business Chamber of Commerce will remain, hope to have its own board, its own chief executive officer. I want to pass the torch on it. I think we've locked in a format for the Idea Cafe startup workshops and praxis incubators that we can spread through other people. And if you'd like to see this new format, come this afternoon to our meeting, 2 o'clock every Friday afternoon, Panera Bread Cafe, 13th and Grant Street, just a block from the state capitol. It's a meeting free and open to everybody. We encourage people to come who are starting something new or who help work with people who are starting something new, CPAs, lawyers, consultants. If that's you, if you're starting or if you help people who are, love to have you join us this afternoon. It's going to be an important meeting because I've got the format for the new style of meeting that we're doing. And I'm going to invite one of the people who attends today to lead the meeting next week. I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. next week. And I need somebody to lead the meeting. So come experience it today yourself, then lead the meeting next week, and then go start one on your own. And we don't protect anything we do as intellectual property. If you come and get a good idea and you've got a little bit better idea, go for it. We think that's kind of where we came from. You know, all of us in life stand on the shoulders of giants, and these people that try to put the genie back in the bottle, I think, are making a big mistake. And, you know, the genie gets angry and sometimes starts performing well. So if we have the spirit of helpfulness, how can I help the next person do just a little bit better? I think It's an entirely different approach. Now, I'm not against academia. As a matter of fact, what's triggered this rapid development of this new approach is something I was thinking about last January. I put on the back burner, and it came to the front burner about this time last week, right after the show. I got my mail, and there was the University of Denver Alumni Magazine, and it mentioned my little book on business startup and said I was applying those principles now to the start of something new, wrencollege.org. And I definitely had that in mind. I put it on the back burner, but that rapidly brought it to the front. I sent it out. You may have seen it on social media. I put it out as widely as I could. And I started a Facebook page for Wren College. You can probably search for it on Facebook right now if you want. And I spiffed up a little bit the sort of poor boys website that we've got. It's wrencollege.org, W-R-E-N college.org. And you can see what we're up to. I don't know if this is going to be part of the Small Business Chamber of Commerce. That's kind of how we're holding ourselves out now. But it may be that that flips and that Wren College comes to the front and that the Small Business Chamber of Commerce is going to be part of it. There's colleges and universities with institutes and so forth. Well, we may have started the institute first. I'm not sure how we're going to do some of this stuff. But what I am sure of is that each week here on the air and each Friday afternoon at 2, we're going to continue trying to be as useful as we can to people who are starting in a new direction. And we're going to try to benefit from that same help ourselves, myself right now, but I'm now, and it's really not just me now. I've invited some 300 people to be part of the faculty. If you go to our Facebook page, you can see what's going on. It's a closed Facebook page, which means that you have to join but you can see who already has joined. It's not a secret group where not even the members are known, but it's a closed group. And you can go in and save your friends from making a big mistake. If you see them on the faculty, do you know what Wren has done to you? And I really do want people to resign, get themselves off, or post a notice on the page and I'll take them off. If you don't want to be there, then I certainly don't want you there. And I'm hoping out of the 300, we can drop down to, I don't know what the number is, 12, 24 or so core members that are going to help move this forward. And I believe it fits the temper of the times. There is absolute agreement on one thing in America today, and that is our K through 12 education is having a difficult time. Kids are just not learning, it seems. And higher education has got a similar problem, especially at the better schools. They're testing kids going into Harvard and coming out of Harvard. Now, these are very smart kids with a good education before they ever darken the door of Harvard. But the difference between what they know before Harvard and what they know after Harvard is not all that great. Our great institutions are becoming geared more and more towards research, supporting the faculty, and especially undergraduate education is getting neglected. And that's compounded by the fact that most people never go to college. In today's world, there seems to be absolute agreement that today, more than ever before, lifelong, continuous adult learning is absolutely mandatory. But schools are optional, so we want to provide an alternative. And the dream is small adult learning groups that are based on the principles of the founders of this movement. I guess if you named one person, it would be Malcolm Knowles. He researched how adults learn because in his experience after graduating himself from Harvard, back in the good old days when I think that really meant a lot, and it still means a lot, but back then, the purpose of the undergraduate degree was to turn you into a lifelong learner. So he knew how to learn, and he was hired by the YMCA to try to help them do adult education programs. And he right away noticed that there was a problem with adult education. It was using the wrong approach. It wasn't making people think. It was sit down, shut up, take notes, and classes dwindled down. Adults just wouldn't take the same treatment that kids will K through 12 because the law makes them sit down, shut up. And how people learn, adults especially, but kids too, is not that way. We're not blank slates to be written on. And education, the word actually means to draw out. So we're using this adult learning model, Malcolm Knowles, and also the model of praxis. And if you go to wrencollege.org, you'll see a really powerful essay on what does praxis mean. But what it basically means is that we can't sit down and make a plan for something we've never done before. It's the open door. You know, to step through the open door, do you have to write a plan of what's in the room? No, you don't know what's in the room. So praxis is the idea of, usually in the light of some common agreement, some sort of a book. It could be the great books of the Western world. It could be one particular text, but usually in the light of some sort of a text like that, you take the chance and you step through the open door, and then you reassess and you do it again. Because really life is a series of door after door after door. We never know for sure. We see this most clearly in some subjects such as mathematics. Best math lesson I ever had was in econometrics, where we were using calculus, and I really had not had a calculus class. I went back to graduate school. I had the undergraduate understanding of mathematics, which is required of us all, but I hadn't taken calculus. And I had a terrific teacher, and he said, look, you can do this, just every day do a little bit of math. And he said, you know, math is like batting practice. You have to take it every day. And it's also the process of going from what's totally confusing, there's no way you can understand it, to mastery. And that happens sort of like flipping a switch, because all of a sudden you understand. And as you look back, it looks simple. You cannot imagine why it was so difficult for you to get that next concept. And then you go to the next one, and the process repeats. Now, some people go through that a lot faster than others, but it's common to us all. We go from the unknown to the known, and that presents new unknowns. And anybody that tries to freeze frame it, make it into a set of rules, has a difficult time, because things change. Now, this is not situational ethics. This is looking for the revelation of truth, which is a totally different thing. So we come closer and closer to perceiving the fullness of creation, is one way of looking at it. Now, the light that's going to guide our efforts in Wren College, I think, and I'm going to try to decide that for sure this afternoon at Panera Bread. If you got to vote in this, you got to be there to vote. And it's not a vote anyway. I'm going to do this one way or the other, but I will be listening to what people say very carefully. The book I have in mind is Father James Martin's book, The Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything. And people will say, well, that's not a book about education. Well, it is about education. And it's a foundational book that I think can cast a wide net. And Ignatius of Loyola was a soldier who was injured, had a religious experience that was very powerful. And it was the experience that he had that he wanted to share. Not theory, not theology. He wanted to share this experience and try to help others have similar experiences. And, it's that type of experience that is so popular today, and why people don't take more seriously what was developed, so long ago and has proven to be helpful to so many people. And instead we go out and cook up new things around Greek and Roman gods and things like this that we really have no feel for ourselves. It's not been carried forward in any kind of a continuous tradition, or if it has, it's been sort of a powerful force that is a little bit scary. But this is all out in the open. And especially with the lightness of Father James Martin and the way that he brings it in his one book in particular. He's written all kinds of things. He continues to be very active. He continues to write. And, who knows, maybe we can lure him as our first commencement speaker. Now, commencement, a lot of these things, we're not going to compete against academia. As a matter of fact, I think we complement it. My thought, oh, there's somebody else. I wish he'd call Monday or Tuesday, but that's okay. And maybe they'll see this and call back. And if you do want to be on the show, call Monday or Tuesday, 303-861-1447. So here's what we're going to call this new effort that's meant to complement academia. It's estimated maybe 20% of the people are going to be continuing to get their learning needs filled through traditional higher education. The other 80% are going to be doing online education, MOOCs. There are certain autodidacts who can just study on their own, but most of us need to get together with some people and talk about things once in a while. If I watch, do, teach, I learn. If I just watch, I'm not really learning. I have to do. And if I watch and do, I'm really not learning, because until I don't really thoroughly master something until I show it to someone else. And lots of professions know this. And so people go to one school or another and they say, well, when I really started learning was when I got out of school. And that was their ticket to begin this process of watching, doing, teaching. And whether it's the legal profession, accounting, whatever it is, this is very often where people say they've learned the very most. So we're going to go straight to that. Now, we're not excluding anyone from participating with us, but we're also not trying to replace traditional higher education. For many, many people, that is an important route to go. Learning is only, in one way of looking at it, is about a third of why you go to a place like Harvard. And that is an important 1/3, but also there's their credentialing. It means something to have that Harvard diploma on your wall. It certifies, whether you knew it before you got there or not, you know a certain amount to be able to have that certificate hanging on your wall. And that's related to the other third, and that is becoming part of a group that can be useful to you in all sorts of ways as you go through life. And there is no way in the world I would discourage anyone from having the benefit of that. I've had the benefit myself. This whole Wren College idea is being launched because of the encouragement from the University of Denver, mentioning me in their alumni magazine this month. So I hope you'll take a look at it. Now, why Wren College? People will think, well, that's egotist. No, it's really not me. It's Sir Christopher Wren. And Sir Christopher Wren is a church builder. They had the big fire in London in 1666, and he ended up building some 80 churches. St. Paul's is the big one, and he kept that project going pretty much as his retirement plan. He kept building on to St. Paul's, and but he gave the first talk at the founding meeting of the Royal Academy. And if you Google the Royal Academy, if you're not already familiar with it, you'll be amazed. But this was a small group of people that band together in what I believe was a praxis group and started looking at how can we reconcile some of these differences between science and religion. And this is back when that was a dangerous fight to be involved in. But they started meeting and have done a tremendous amount of good. Well, Sir Christopher Wren gave the first talk. Am I related? I doubt it. But I may know soon. I've gotten the Ancestry.com kit for tracking down who your ancestors are through DNA. So wouldn't that be great if I was somehow connected to him? But I doubt it. He had no children, so it would be an indirect connection, and I don't even know if Ancestry can be conclusive on that or not. But it's also being named Wren College in memory of my father, who was the best independent self-directed learner, best autodidact I knew. His monthly meeting, getting together with friends to discuss what they learned, was his poker group. And they played poverty poker. They would each put in $20. You could not lose more than $20. When you lost all your chips, you got to play for free. But it was just a group of friends. They'd vacation together, get together for cookouts, and they were just good friends. And if you've got that kind of an organic group, then that's fantastic. But unfortunately, more and more people today just don't have that. The book Robert Putnam wrote a couple of decades ago that really was my initial inspiration in trying to do something to help. Putnam was a sociologist. He wrote an article. Alumni came back and said, "Dr. Putnam, I read your article. You were really right." And his article was about the declining rates of social participation and how membership in, whether it's little poker groups like what my dad was in or more formal things, that they were disappearing, that people were becoming isolated and alone. And it was a big problem. And a student came back to the alumni function. "Dr. Putnam, you're right on with your article. That is really happening. I'm in the bowling industry," the student said. "And it used to be that league bowling was a big thing. But that's really fallen off, and now people come in and they just bowl alone. Bowl alone as compared to being part of this group that comes every week and knows each other. You just come in and bowl alone." And that was such a powerful image. That became the title of the book when Putnam expanded the article. And it had a big impact on me and a lot of other people. And now today it gives the appearance that that's changed. Social media, there's more stuff, more interaction, but I'm not sure it really has. A lot of these things I show up for are an inch deep and a mile wide, and you may get a lot of business cards and say, "Hi, how are you?" And in a way, they become excuses for drinking parties, and people get together, and does it really help their business? I'm not so sure. I saw a CPA write an article in the Journal of Accountancy. This has been quite a while ago, but he compared that kind of just business by tea party approach, where you go to events and gather business cards, to just picking up the phone and calling people. And there's no comparison. As far as a marketing device, pick up the phone and call who you want to talk to. But so these hangouts put on by all kinds of groups where you just get together and network. Now, your neighborhood is your best network. And the vision here is that we have praxis in every neighborhood, first across Colorado, maybe across the country, maybe around the world. If we had a praxis in each neighborhood where neighbors got together, not everyone, you don't have to have everyone, but to leaven the neighborhood, it could change the face of the world, I believe. And that's what we want to do, in cooperation with everything else that's out there right now, trying to serve a common purpose. And I believe that's most institutions of higher education. I think they're good people trying to help. And but it's like poetry. April 1st is Poetry Day. And a couple of years on April 1st, there was a column in the Wall Street Journal about, as this writer saw it, the very solid fact that higher education is killing poetry. And it used to be that poetry, people would memorize it, recite it. It would be part of the social gatherings. There'd be poetry read or recited. In newspapers, they would have poetry. And that's pretty much disappeared. And this writer made the argument that that's because of academic approach to poetry, that it just squeezes the life out of it. Now, does that mean that it's not necessary to have poetry classes? Well, you have to if you're going to make it part of the curriculum, K through 12. I think it's good to have academic, but that's not where you're going to make the point. The same thing's happening in entrepreneurship, I believe, is that's fine to make it an academic study, but that's different than being an entrepreneur. You know, I've seen this in these little Idea Cafe startup workshops that we've done, is that people come in and they have majored in entrepreneurship. Better, they should have majored in history, philosophy, literature. You know, I'm a big believer in liberal arts education being the best foundation. The Institute for Financial Executives published a study several decades ago, and I don't believe this has changed. I'd like to see it replicated, but they looked at the career success based on college choices, and undergraduate engineering, undergraduate liberal arts, undergraduate business, coupled with either an MBA or no MBA. And they looked at career success as earnings. You can argue with that, but it's one way to look at it. So who earned the most? It was the MBA coupled with liberal arts. And who earned the second most? Now, it was liberal arts alone. And you could argue that there's cultural bias in that, and I suspect there is, but I think the point holds true that if you've had a liberal arts education and you've learned how to think, and especially if you go out and work for a little bit and then come back and get an MBA, it's going to be more powerful in your success than it is if who earned the least. In this study, it was the person that had a 4-year degree in business and then came back for an MBA. And what they concluded was that if you couldn't get it in 4 years, you know, going to graduate school is not going to help you that much. Now, if that's you, you know, I'm sorry to insult you, and you probably aren't going to like what I'm saying. But who I'm really trying to talk to is a person that maybe took a little bit of college, maybe never went at all, maybe even struggled in high school. My dad struggled in high school. I think he graduated. I'm not absolutely sure of that. But he did learn how to read, and he was truly a lifelong learner. Learning was an important thing to him, and he took some classes that I'll talk about another time. But who I'm trying to help is the person who watches this and says, you know, I want to get started. I've got that door in front of me. I can't decide whether to step through it. I want you to have a place to go. And the best place to go is helping others who are facing that same situation. That's what Praxis is about. And we'll talk about this more next week, and we'll also talk about it this afternoon at the Denver, the Capitol Hill Idea Cafe Startup Workshop and Praxis Incubator. Carl Dakin will be there as he's an expert in crowdfunding and some of the new laws that have passed. He'll be with us. Corky Kyle, who's one of the top lobbyists in the state. Russell Means, who works with nonprofits, and each one will have a table of people interested in that particular topic that could have the potential of becoming Praxis. At least that's the vision. Now, we're going to keep repeating this each Friday until it works. So if you can't be here with us this Friday, put it on your calendar for next Friday. But 2 o'clock every Friday afternoon, Panera Bread Cafe, 13th and Grant. And call me anytime. I'm always glad to talk to people who are starting. Call Monday and Tuesday is the best bet. I try to make myself available by the phone. Call if you'd like to be on the show here to start your weekend off right next week by sharing your startup experience with us in front of your computer. Or call me if you're starting and you're stuck, and maybe I can give you a little bit of a boost right on the phone. But call me Monday or Tuesday, 303-861-1447. Check out our website, smallbizchamber.org. We got a Facebook page. You're a member of the Small Business Chamber. If you say you are, we love it if you introduce yourself on our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/small business chamber divided by periods. We're out of time. This is John Wren. Remember, this life is very short. Let's go get started.